Caroline from Personal Empowerment Academy. I hope you've had an awesome day. So I'm just squeezing in my late night live for Monday night in Sydney. So today I wanted to talk to you about an issue that is kind of, I suppose, close to my heart at the moment. So I just wanted to share, some insights that I've been reflecting on. And that is in regards to finding the root cause of your challenges. So at different times in your life, you can find yourself in a situation where you just seem to be going through a real string of challenging times. So it can feel like an avalanche, sort of like, one big thing happens and then you're trying to deal with that and the next thing happens and, it all starts to roll into one. It can get quite overwhelming. And when you're going through those times, you can really, feel quite emotional, feel like really stretched, like it's sort of taking everything that you've got. And it's overall just really challenging and sort of a test of your strength and sometimes your character. And sometimes you can feel like you want to throw the towel in, but for different reasons you can't, and you've just got to push forward. And so, one of the things that I find really interesting is I think when a lot of these things pop up and when it starts to feel like, your problems are sort of ridiculously out of control, then it's important to really stop and to try and reflect on, why all of this is happening. Like, maybe it's an opportunity for you to confront something or, to face up to some issues that maybe you haven't dealt with in the past. And so I want to touch on, I suppose, a specific category of issues. And this is the kind of stuff that really gets to your core. So I'm talking about the type of issues that, have to do with things that throw you into survival mode. So it could be, around money specifically. So it could be that for whatever reason, you've kicked back into survival mode and you're struggling to, get some of your basic needs met. Or, for different reasons, and it might not even be financially driven. For various reasons, you could find yourself living back with your parents, and particularly in your family home. And I know this tends to happen to quite a few entrepreneurs along their journey. So, some people quite deliberately decide to move back home with their parents to sort of give themselves like a bit of grounding, but to reduce costs as well as they start their entrepreneurial journey. In other cases, there can be something completely unrelated that lands you back with your parents. And that's sort of along the lines of what's happened to me recently. So through just a series of, circumstances that I really couldn't foresee, I ended up having to take on full-time care of my two dogs. And I was living in a unit and, I couldn't have the dogs there. So, just sort of in a moment of not knowing what to do, like I was, very fortunate that I was able to just sort of camp out at my parents' house. And, my old bedroom is still here. And so the dogs and I have been staying with my parents, which has been really awesome. And I love spending time with my parents. And at the same time, it's provided an opportunity to reflect on, a whole number of things that have popped up. But I bring this up because it's one of those things that when you do find yourself in that situation, and interestingly, not only have I found myself spending time back at my parents' house, but as things have turned out, I'm now going to be moving back into a house that I used to live in anyway, and in fact the house where I first had the dogs a few years ago. So it's all sort of this strange mix of circumstances and events that I really couldn't have prepared myself for because I didn't see any of this coming. And so one of the things I talked to one of my coaches about is why these types of issues happen. And when things hit you that either have to do with being back in survival mode or sort of going back to almost like living in the past or dealing with things around your childhood, like finding yourself back in your family home with your parents, these are typically what we call first chakra issues. So if you're not familiar with the chakras, so it's not something I do a lot of teaching on. So chakras are like energy centers, and you can locate them sort of within the body, and they have different meanings. It's a little bit like if you sort of think about the hierarchy of needs. You sort of start with a base level and you've really got to get the grounding right, and then you start to move into sort of your higher level needs and desires. So chakras work in a similar way, except they're energy centers. And as I said, I don't usually spend a lot of time teaching this stuff. So if you sort of think of coaching as a bit of a spectrum, so like down this end, you've kind of got, you know, strategic and tactical solutions. And then you've sort of got, I suppose, you know, mindset is sort of somewhere in the middle. And then you can start going into like really deep transformational work that really starts to talk about, you know, different types of energy and energy healing and that type of thing. And so I'm probably somewhere in the middle. So I do move to both ends of the spectrum, probably more down the strategic and tactical side when it's required, but I suppose to be of more, you know, value and to be able to be backed by sort of research and different tools as well, I do delve into that more transformational space. But it's not something that I tend to spend a lot of time teaching other people, because most of the clients that I work with are usually happy just to get the result and not necessarily dwell on, you know, how or why things are working at an energetic level. Some people like that stuff, but not everybody. So anyway, I just bring it up because it's a particular category of issues. So first chakra issues really have to do with things like your sense of security and safety, so how safe you feel in the world. It has to do with survival, it has to do with having your basic needs met, it has to do with even your physical identity and also your support structure in the world. So, you know, your foundation for like living your life, but also how supported you feel in the world. So it has a lot to do with grounding overall. And so it's called the first chakra, and your first chakra physically is located at the base of your spine. So you can almost think of it as sort of like this core of energy, and you've got to have your core right to be able to have everything else functioning. So without that, you know, the other elements of the body would crumble around it because they're not supported. And so the idea in energy healing is that you really want to start at your first chakra because, as I said, you've really got to get that grounding right before you can move into your higher level needs. So, you know, I bring this up because when you start to face these types of first chakra issues, then usually it's an invitation to healing, invitation for healing, and it has to do with healing with regards to things that have happened usually in your past, like even going back to your childhood or maybe your teenage years. And so, you know, a lot of people find that these things can come up like in their sort of mid-30s, even their 40s. So they're things that you may not have dealt with previously. It might have never occurred to you that these things were even issues, and then all of a sudden they sort of come and bite you in the butt, but they come through as a series of problems that sort of just take you back to sort of your earlier years. And so, as I said, you know, when you're going through these types of issues, it is a massive invitation for you to heal and to go back and try to find the root cause of those challenges, and to work out, you know, whether there were events when you were younger that caused you to lose that sense of safety and security, and to shake up, you know, your ability to feel grounded in the world. And so they can be really simple things, but often just physically being back in that old environment, you know, can trigger things that remind you of those issues that you perhaps hadn't dealt with. And so, you know, different ways that might come up. So, you know, if it has something to do with, you know, even moving, like the process of moving maybe from your current place back to your parents or somewhere else. One thing I found is the whole process of, you know, packing and relocating, like you're physically going through a lot of stuff, like whether it's photos, just old memories, like maybe of, you know, past relationships, past friendships, people you haven't seen, people who have passed on and, you know, you miss, and it just conjures up all of these feelings, and often you know, it can be things you weren't prepared for. So, you know, you're really busy and trying to get through all of this work, but you can end up feeling quite emotional just because of the, you know, unplanned memories that suddenly come flooding back into your life. And so maybe that's one way that you can, you know, tap into things, or areas where you still need some healing. And so, you know, in terms of things that you can do, so if you do find yourself in that environment, one of the big things that has really stood out for me, so particularly around, I suppose, the area of support. So I can tend to be fiercely independent and I tend to want to tackle everything on my own, but, you know, we're not meant to go through life completely alone and having to do everything. So, you know, it, I think, was a big opportunity for me to not only, you know, ask for help when I really needed it, but also to accept help. Like when you really sort of open your heart and, you know, you open up, and sometimes you just need to relax a little bit, you can see that there's lots of people around you who are actually willing to, you know, give you their time, give you their help, give you their support. And, you know, sometimes you'll be quite amazed at, you know, who does pop up and who's there to support you. And so, you know, through this whole process, I think that's been a really big learning for me. So I always knew that I had support, but, you know, sometimes you just, yeah, feel really grateful and appreciative of the people who are there to support you. And so that is one area that you probably need to address if you are dealing with these first chakra issues, because it is sort of in that space where, because it has to do in a lot of cases with things you didn't deal with earlier on, you can feel quite lonely in that space. And so in sort of your present environment, actually learning to ask for and accept help from others can help you, you know, heal in that way and heal some of those old wounds. And so, you know, it's really just left me feeling extremely grateful for the friends and the family that I do have, and how far people will be willing to go to help you when you are going through some challenging times. So, you know, those of you who have been around and have been helping me out, like, I do want to say a massive thank you, and I really appreciate you and value you. And I hope that, you know, other people can sort of learn something from this as well, because it is definitely something that can pull you through those sort of really low times. And then, of course, you know, out of all of that, so once you sort of do get through the thick of whatever challenge you're dealing with, there's a massive opportunity for a new beginning and starting afresh, so clearing away some of that old stuff. And, you know, if you don't completely know how to clear away old issues, that is something I specialize in, and, you know, I'd be more than happy to help you deal with that. You can always even just, you know, leave a comment, or if it's really personal, you can send me a message through Messenger, and I'll be more than happy to have a chat to you about whatever you're dealing with at that level. So, you know, overall, like, so feel grateful, you know, accept help, embrace the challenge, and keep pushing forward and keep moving onwards and upwards. So I hope that in some way that was a small dose of inspiration for you today. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.